What's up, Cerebral football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. And boy, oh boy, did Saquon Barkley have himself an opening debut for the Philadelphia Eagles down in South America on a slip and slide of a field that we were playing on. What an opening performance for Saquon Barkley. And I know it's kind of crazy because some people have been kind of reaching out to me and like asking about the grading, the fact that Saquon was graded so lowly in that game. I'm just going to say that I don't really care about grading. To me, they're overweighting, 2 or 3 yard runs. And I don't think that, to be fair about grading the way it works, and I warned you guys about this last week. I told you guys, grading's a good place to have a talk, to start a discussion, but you should never take it as gospel because they're not talking about run fits. They're not telling you if they're going against a 7 or 8 or 9-man run fit with the success rate they're having, right? They're discounting big play rates and things like that when it comes to the overall grading. So look, just don't worry about that kind of stuff, guys. You'll know by what the defense does. You'll know by what subsequent defenses do now that Saquon Barkley is on the field. They'll tell you everything you need to know. I don't care what PFF says in their grading. I care what the defensive coordinators do in the subsequent weeks that now follow, because I promise you, they're going to be paying a lot more attention to Saquon Barkley because my man touched the ball 26 times on 2 receptions and 24 rushing attempts, which, if I had to be honest, that was more production or more utilization within the offense than I was anticipating him having right out the gate. And it's kind of refreshing to see that, right? Because a lot of us were kind of like, man, if they only use him kind of like the way that they've been using like Miles Sanders, the way they've been kind of using, guys like, DeAndre Swift, who both are good players. They both are really good players for Philly. They both really performed for Philly. But I think all of us kind of felt like, Saquon is like, he's a level above those dudes. Like, this is a guy that's a legitimate weapon inside of an offense. Like, he should be a little bit more of a focal point. I think from opening weekend, you saw that he became kind of the Kickstarter of the offense. And I think that's important to go to, is that when the rhythm got affected, guys, and when we got being on scheduled offense got affected early on in the game, we had those turnovers that really, really affected us in those early possessions, gave Green Bay a chance to really grab hold of the game. But shout out to Vic Fangio and that defense because it held pretty strong for us down in that red zone. What did they do? Well, they reverted back to Saquon. They reverted the offense back to Saquon. They got everything kind of rolling again. They got everything back on schedule again, and then they played off of that rhythm that they created. And I do think that's kind of an important point. That you look at a guy like Saquon, the early indications are like, what's going to be his role? Like, we know the Eagles didn't pay, Devontae Smith. They didn't pay A.J. Brown. They didn't pay Jalen Hurts, right? They didn't extend Dallas Goedert's contract a couple of years ago for them not to be utilized and not to be part of the passing game and not to be, the offense in general not really being facilitated that way. We all know that. I mean, inherently, we know that. You can look at the contracts. You can look at the way that the front office is organizing the roster and where they're allocating the money to kind of get a feel for exactly what they plan to do here. But I do think when you talk about the role, we saw some of the role here. What is the role of Saquon Barkley? Well, to begin with, I think he's the balancing act. I think he's the thing that brings balance to the offense, right? I think another important thing that wasn't talked about last night on some of the parlays that I betted over the weekend. One of the parlays I lost was on Jalen Hurts scoring a touchdown because I just know how this offense. And by the way, over a 17-game course, I'm going to be right more than I'm wrong about Jalen Hurts scoring a touchdown. However, we did see that they pulled the lever back a little bit on that, right? Jalen really and honestly had the lever pulled back a little bit in terms of his rushing attempts. He did clear me for, I went really conservative with a 25-yard estimate on his runs because I had a feeling that we were going to kind of see this, that most of Jalen's runs were going to be kind of these little 2-3 yard get down, avoid pressure type things. They weren't going to be like a whole lot of, built in kind of ordeals there. But you could also make the argument that some of those runs were impacted by the fact that the option was there for Jalen to run, but the talent around him is so good, he doesn't have to do it so much anymore. And I do think that's like Saquon, when you look at balancing the offense and then taking hits, taking pressure off of Jalen Hurts and making the running game just that much more potent. I thought you saw that play out on Friday on a field that, my Lord, if we could talk about those field conditions, guys. I mean, shout out to I know we got people in the community that live in South America. They live down in Brazil, and I know they were excited to have this football game. A few of them kind of spoke up during the offseason about how excited they were to get a game down there, especially being an Eagles game. I told you guys, the last 2 weeks when you guys kept asking about the field conditions, about the grass, I told you I don't know nothing about their field. Like, I, that's above my understanding level. Like, I don't know. We had some people who were familiar with the field kind of chimed in and told us that it was a synthetic blend between natural grass and artificial. And then we heard that the NFL kind of worked with them to try to get it into as reasonable a condition for an NFL game as could humanly be possible. But I do think the NFL deserves a lot of smoke because if you want to talk about difficulty grading things, and I'm not going to talk about this today in depth, I think that's going to be a topic for another video, but there's an inherent advantage for the offensive line, and there was an inherent disadvantage for the defensive line. It was quite obvious. Those field conditions made those things a little bit of a problem. So when you got a team like the Eagles who have a really good offensive line, you're in trouble. The Eagles survived 3 turnovers. Let this sink in, guys. The Eagles survived 3 turnovers, and they threw up over 30 points. 3 turnovers over 30 points on your head, turning the ball over, 3 times. Bro, they were +2 in the turnover margin and won the game. Those aren't typical, guys. These are not typical results. Like, these are things I would be hesitant and I would point out to people to be cautious about. You're not going to normally win games where you're +2 in the turnover margin and you've made 3 or more turnovers. You've really 2 or more turnovers. Once you start getting into that category of turnovers, it normally has a negative impact on you. But it just goes to show you the talent level of this offense, right? It goes to show you that the inner belief, some of those things were resolved. I heard a few of you guys that were on Twitter, read a few of you guys, not heard really. Some of you guys were like, oh man, this kind of feels a little reminiscent to last year. I didn't get that sense of this, guys. I didn't get a sense that this was like basically rehashing some of the things we saw last year. This felt like like they were facing, adversity and they overcame it. This felt like, okay, we got bad field conditions. We got an off season in which we did increase the practice time. We did some things to try to offset some of these problems. We increased the practice time, but we were 1 down. We didn't practice as much. I think we're actually 2 down technically. Normally we have 3 joint practices. So 2 teams, 3 to 4 joint practices over this course. I think we only did 1 day at 1 joint practice with the Patriots, and that was it. And then we didn't really play our offensive starters the entire preseason. And I do think you saw, when you talk about getting the rhythm of the offense correct, you talk about playing on schedule within the offense. I did see a little bit of that rear its head a little bit, right? That's why you'll hear people like me tell you, and I'll be straightforward with you. Never believe what week 1 shows you. Week 1 is the greatest liar in the entire NFL. Like, week 1 is definitely kind of like it's one of those situations to where like you kind of have to, you got to let things play out a little bit. It's going to take a couple of weeks for these teams to kind of adjust. And then once that adjustment happens, I'd say by the end of October, guys, you'll have a fairly good sense of who's for real and who's not. So, like, yeah, I mean, week 1, I definitely think we can make some critiques here and say, like, hey, man, if you're not going to play guys inside of the preseason offensively, if you're not going to get them accustomed to tackling defensively, you got to make sure that you're on point with how you set up your practices, right? There needs to be more than just a single joint practice. And then Vic's credit, Vic did make his starters play a little bit in the preseason, but offensively, we didn't really make our starters play. I mean, a couple of guys here like Mekhi Becton and them that were fighting for jobs, fighting for positioning. But for the most part, like, those guys didn't play. Those guys didn't go through. And you can make the argument, like, I don't know that AJ and Devontae and those dudes need to play, but I do think there's something to be said about that a little bit, especially defensively and some of the struggles we had tackling. I mean, I know field conditions weigh in on that. I'm not going to say that field conditions don't play a role. And I think even Saquon Barkley's crazy performance from this game, there's an inherent advantage towards the offensive line when you're playing on a slip and slide. And then you got a guy like Saquon that's 230 pounds and athletic. It's still challenging for defenses, right? I mean, it's challenging when you can get good footing. It's really challenging when you can't get good footing. And I think you could play this both ways. To some extent, when the offensive line is bearing down on you and you're the defensive line, you're the front 7 of a defense, yeah, you're at a disadvantage. But at the same time, I think there were some plays that probably would have been broken. They would have been really, really, really big plays that would have been broken in this game. And we saw that these guys slipped down on both sides of the ball. Josh Jacobs had a run that I think would have been 50+ yards if he didn't slip. Saquon had a couple early on, like, it goes to both sides of it, but the field conditions were crap. The field conditions out there were they were an absolute disaster. Like, the NFL should be ashamed of itself for that, guys. Like, that was really, really poorly put together, really, really poorly planned. I don't think that it necessarily had a role in, Jordan Love being injured. I don't think it would directly resulted in that, but you can make a case that indirectly, because field conditions aren't the greatest, it's going to affect line play, even though it normally is it's an advantage, especially within the run game for the offensive line versus the defensive line. You can make the saying that if you're slipping and sliding and you're 300 some pounds and you got your quarterback exposed, you got to do like Jordan Davis, bearing down on you. You got a guy like Jalen Carter bearing down on you. You got guys that are athletic, like, Josh Sweats and stuff, bearing down on you. Like, Brandon Graham's got that grown man strength. Like, yeah, like you can make an argument that, hey, man, indirectly, it had a result here. We got a player who's pretty important to the league who just got a sprained MCL. um, I don't know. I don't know where I sit on that one, guys. I don't know that the field conditions would have mattered. I think the play mattered more than the field conditions. I just think he got caught in a really awkward angle that it's very rare that it happens. And when it happens, normally I think the injury is a lot worse than what Jordan Love sustained. I think he's pretty fortunate that he only sprained the MCL, and it doesn't look like. I mean, I'm not a doctor guy, so I can't really say exactly how long he's going to be out, but um, I don't think with a sprained MCL that's going to be like a full season type thing. I think he'll be good. I mean, I think he's going to take some time, and just like any other sprain, it takes time to kind of heal. And of course, you don't want to put an overburdening workload on a sprain, especially when you're dealing with your knee. But yeah, man, that field condition stuff, guys. That was tough to watch even on the TV, man. The first play where Saquon slipped down, and like just watching everyone's comments on Twitter and the way that they were freaking out, and I was just like kind of laughing because I was like, come on, man. Like, clearly the field condition played a role here. Like, he clearly tried to cut back. It's a one cut. He tried to cut back and get downhill, and he lost his footing because of it. I'm interested to judge things as we get into week 2. I'm interested to judge that defensive line. I'm interested to see if the offensive line plays as well, this time around. I was a little shocked at how well the offensive line played, and I think the field conditions definitely played a role in that. With that said, man, like, this was a good outing. This was a good performance. This was a playoff team. Like, and I don't hold anything against Green Bay for this game, because I just think that week 1 it's a SHIT show, guys. You can't believe what week 1 shows you. Week 1 it's the greatest deceiver in the entire NFL. Like, I'm not going to put too much stock in what happens in week 1. There are still teams out there that are still learning some stuff, but I will say that while we're in this phase, and I'm going to, later in the week, guys, we're going to talk a little bit more about Jalen Hurts' performance. We're going to talk a little bit more about like the totality of what we saw here. But I think one thing we can take away from this is that while we are still learning the offense, right? When I say learning the offense, it's not learning the playbook necessarily. It's the timing things, being where your foot should be in the drop to where the receiver is at the top of his route stem. Like, there's a timing to these things, guys. I think that we saw some stuff that was a little off in this game. We saw some things that weren't quite right yet. Overall, I still think they did okay. But I'll say that, like, timing wise, there's some things to clean up here. There's definitely some things to clean up in terms of the timing of these plays. And I think that comes with the fact that we spent a lot of the offseason working on protections, slides. What I can't remember how they referred to it. Kellen Moore referred to it. I think it is like, I think he calls it his exchange, the quarterback exchange or whatever. Working on those things. And we saw that it reared its ugly head. We saw a miscommunication between Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts, where Cam Jurgens snapped that ball entirely too soon, which is odd for a home game to have that kind of impact. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's I hate that you get assigned a home game, and that's the part that bothers me a little bit, because some of the advantages that you would normally get from a home game, you don't get like this. Like, you're not getting that advantage, unfortunately. But I mean, we definitely saw a miscommunication on an exchange. That's what the quarterback exchange. Like, we saw a miscommunication there, which led to like issues. Like, that's the kind of things we're talking about, guys, when we talk about it's going to take time for this offense to click a little bit. I think we saw the things that they put a lot of effort into in the offseason, right? We saw them put a lot of effort into essentially like how you react to blitzes. And to be fair, when it came to blitzes, right now, StatHead does not have the blitz numbers up yet. I'm waiting for StatHead to put those up, but they probably won't until they have all the data from across the league, and then they'll probably publish it tomorrow or Wednesday. So when we see that, then I'll give you the exact numbers that StatHead has. But I did see some Reddit threads where they were talking about Jalen Hurts' performance versus the blitz. One person has it as 5 of 7 for 71 yards, a touchdown, one of those being a scramble, but 5 first downs. And I saw another stat line where someone had it 6 of 7 for like 90 some yards. the touchdown and then the scramble. Also 5 first downs. So we see the emphasis was on the blitz, and they did quite well against the blitz. Now I want to make a point here, guys. There's a point to this that, we got to pump the brakes a little bit and be honest about the assessment here. Blitz is part of pressures, but pressures are still, blitz is so not every blitz is a pressure, right? So we have to keep that in mind. But pressure means that someone's in the quarterback's face. They've either hurried the quarterback, they've hit the quarterback, or they've sacked the quarterback. Okay, when we get to pressures. Now, it can be facilitated by blitz or it can be facilitated by winning a matchup, right? With that said, we see when they blitz Jalen Hurts did really well. This offense did really well. There was clearly a point of emphasis during the offseason, and we see that Jalen Hurts and we see the offense, Kellen Moore led, like they had answers to it. They did pretty good. I would still critique it a little bit. I still feel like at times versus pressure, and I'm not sure it's always blitz. I gotta pull 22 guys before I go definitively on saying things. I need the all 22, and I got to be definitive about what I'm saying. But there were some times where I saw versus pressure. I don't know if it was a blitz per se, but versus pressure, still saw a lot of vertical shots here. It was definitely a more vertical offense I think we were built and sold during camp, right? That was a big concern during camp, is they're not pushing the ball down the field. Well, we got into the game, in my opinion, guys, they were pushing the ball down the field. I still think the strength of this team, the strength of this passing game, I should say, is in the intermediate area between 10 and 19 yards. I think that's where Devontae, AJ, I think Dallas Goedert special in that area, and I think Jalen Hurts does a good job there. But I will say that versus pressure, trying to throw the ball vertical in the middle of the field, we saw both quarterbacks make that mistake, by the way. It wasn't just Jalen Hurts. The one interception that, Jordan Love had, same thing. Got pressured, tried to throw towards the middle of the field, tried to throw it a little vertical, got picked off. It's one of those situations to where, I still think there's some growth to be had here. And when I look at pressure numbers, so I gave you the numbers versus blitz. It was like 5-7 or 6-7 where you look at it, between 71 and 91 yards. And then, of course, they had the touchdown versus a blitz, and then they were basically essentially 5 first downs. Now, mind you, blitz does not always translate to pressure, so keep that in mind. Doesn't mean that someone was in the face of Jalen Hurts. It probably got picked up, meaning Jalen saw it from the start and he beat it, which is a good sign. However, when we got pressure, he was pressured on 16 of his dropbacks, okay? On those 16 dropbacks, he was 4 of 13 for 30.8% completion rate, which is pretty bad. It's discernibly bad, guys. For 49 yards, he was no touchdowns, 1 interception with pressure in his face. He had 3 turnover-worthy passes versus pressure. His average depth of target was 11.3 yards, which, to be fair, Jordan Love's was 15.8 yards versus pressure. Patrick Mahomes was 12.6 yards per pressure. The only person who threw shorter versus pressure was Lamar Jackson. So, you can critique it to say, on average, Steve, we might be looking at 1 or 2 of those plays and scaling it beyond the actual averages, which I do think kind of holds out when you look at the average depth of target versus pressure, which was 11.3 yards. So, there's some fairness I think has to be brought to the discussion we have around that. But I will say, an offensive grading of 20.6, mind you, guys, I will say this until I'm blue in the face. I don't give a crap about offensive grading. I'm just using it as an impartial basis so we can have a conversation. I don't trust PFF grades. I don't trust when Saquon Barkley is basically the lowest graded guy on the offense. I'm telling you, you need glasses. You need glasses if you think he was, statistically speaking, the worst player out there on the field for the offense. Get out of here with that. Get out of here with that. When your computer model spits that back out to you, it means you need to do some adjustments to the algorithm you're using. You're clearly devaluing something too much. Okay? We all know that, yes, Saquon's, he's 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 11 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards, 3 yards, 26 yards. Yeah, we know that's Saquon's game. But it doesn't tell you 7-man, 8-man, 9-man spacing. Are they bringing 8 in the box to shut you down? They're not telling you those things, right? You can get to different ones. You can get to different sites and look up 8-man boxing. But I'm saying in the grades, I don't think that they're doing a good enough job of accounting for actually what's happening, to be quite honest. And I think they're underrating big plays. If you think Saquon Barkley was the worst player offensively on the field along with Jalen Hurts, no. I think that Jalen Hurts had a pretty bad game. I think Jalen Hurts deserves to be critiqued a little bit. But I also think Jalen Hurts is a big part of the reason why we won. So, you got to keep it in perspective, right? Probably had a pretty rough game, guys, overall, for being honest. Overall, Jalen Hurts, he was risky with the football in this game. He got away with a lot in this game with the football. With that said, he's also a pretty dang big part of the reason why we won this football game. Like his ability to overcome those things, his ability to still make plays when we need him to make plays. You know, I don't love when he goes through contact, but you can see when we really need a first down. Good luck trying to bring this dude down. Like if there's 1 yard between you and him in the first down, good luck trying to bring him down, man. He's incredibly strong. Like to me, I'm a little cautious about these gradings, guys. I don't put a lot of faith in grading, but I also know that like we got to have somewhere we can have a outside perspective, and we got to have somewhere we can have a discussion. And I think we need to just be clear on where we're disagreeing here. With me, I just think that you're clearly undervaluing, the big plays that Saquon Barkley produced and the importance that he had to this offense. Look at the game last night with Detroit and look at the game with the Rams. The Rams are a good team. Detroit's a good team. I think both those teams are playoff teams. To me, you know what the biggest distinguishing difference was between those two teams? I think the Rams really struggle in the red zone. I don't think the Rams are a really good red zone team for whatever reason. Now, to be fair, the Rams were missing half of their offensive line. They were missing Puka. They were missing some pieces there, to be fair to the Rams. I thought the Rams showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit, a lot of gut on the road week 1 with that kind of, issue surrounding your team to come out there and fight the way they fought the Detroit Lions. I give them a lot of credit for that. But they had that problem last year too, to be fair. They didn't always perform well in the red zone. The Rams didn't. And that's why I look at the situation, to Trill Will's point about zero context. Contextually, what can we say about Saquon Barkley? Saquon with Jalen Hurts, with A.J. Brown, with Dallas Goedert, with even, you take a look at a guy like Devontae Smith who played a role down in the red zone, late in the game. You got all these guys out here who can make plays. Grant Calcaterra is going to factor in, I think, to the red zone. They got guys out here that can make plays. Johnny Wilson. They got a lot of size. They got a lot. We're tough to defend in the red zone. But make no mistakes about it. Who was special in the red zone on Friday? Saquon was. Saquon was special in the red zone on Friday. This guy had 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. Now, the receiving touchdown, I think, might have been, it was right around the red zone. I don't know if he was technically in the red zone, but the point still stands what I'm making here, guys. When the field tightens up, Saquon is really good at still being productive, right? And a lot of that has to do with the Eagles' offensive line. A lot of that has to do with Kellen Moore cooking things up down there. A lot of that has to do with Jalen Hurts taking attention off of people. A lot of that has to do with the skill position around there, right? It's a whole team thing, no doubt about it. With that said, I do think that they're undervaluing the impact that Saquon Barkley had on this football game. I made a lot of bets. I did not bet Saquon getting over 2 touchdowns. I wish I'd have made that bet. Whew, I would have got paid out. But I didn't see that one coming. I thought he would definitely get a touchdown in his debut. I mean, the man had 24 rushing attempts, over 100 yards. I think it was like 109 technically, 108, 109, somewhere in that area, guys. And 3 touchdowns in this game. Also had a couple of receptions, 2 or 3 receptions. Guy was pretty good. Guy was definitely good, man. He had a pretty good game. That's what I see from Saquon, guys, is he was the thing that kind of anchored us when things weren't going our way. When it looked like, oh boy, we might be, in the bed on a national stage. What did they do? They fell back, man. They fell back on Saquon. They let Saquon and the offensive line in these field conditions that we were playing in and all this stuff, they let that take over the game a little bit. And I do think that's important because I didn't see 24 rushing attempts coming. If we were betting, I would have definitely lost that bet, guys. I would not have predicted over 20 rushing attempts. I would have said, on the high end, 18. I would have said somewhere between 14 and 18 would probably be his rushing attempts. I thought he would have a little bit more of an impact in the passing game. I was thinking he had a pretty good impact, obviously catching a touchdown there, but I thought he'd get 5 to 7 targets potentially. I thought they were going to come down on the checkdowns a lot more to him. But yeah. All right, let's get to some comments, guys. My guy Trill says the gates have opened. What's up, Trill? How you doing, buddy? Top of the morning, sir. Top of the morning, guys. How's everybody doing today? Unspoken said, Gate City, we are dangerous. We are. This offense is really good. We turned the ball over 3 times for +2 in a turnover margin and put up 30 freaking points. That's incredible. We know we got things to work on. That's what makes this even more exciting is it's not like we came out there and looked flawless. There's a lot to clean up here, and we're still producing at this level. This offense is really good. Some Black Ninja said, Gate the GOAT. Appreciate that, buddy. How you doing today, man? KSF said, I worry about Hurts' decision making. That end zone INT was bad, but all in all, Saquon was amazing. Defense, too, although the score should have been 45-19. Yes, it's week 1, but Hurts needs to do better. You're right, KSF. You're right. He needs to do better. And you're right. His decision making wasn't the greatest in this game. I'm 100% with you on both of those points. I will say, keep in mind, we are installing a new offense. We had less than ideal field conditions, but I do think you're right to say, like, hey, we expect more out of Jalen in these tough situations to not compound the problem. I think that was the bigger issue is that he compounded the problem with some of the decisions he was making with the football. I will say that, like, yes, it's concerning just given where we were last year with this situation. But I'm also fully optimistic that Jalen Hurts is the kind of person that he's going to fix this stuff. He knows what he did was really reckless in that game. And like, we talk about the throwing across the body into the end zone. I'm just going to tell you, someone who played quarterback and coached on KSF. I coached quarterbacks for, over 6 years of my time as a coach. Those aren't the thing. Like, those are the things that you just bring up in the film and like, all right, what will we see? You question it. Like, you don't question him about the decision he made. You question him about what he was reading. You go over the reads. Okay. You go over what flushed you. You go over all those things, right? He knows not to throw the ball across his body. This is an NFL quarterback who's played at the top level of this league. Has been that good. Like, I trust that he's going to get this under control. But yes, you're right. Decision making was very poor in that game. It was very reckless. And Jalen Hurts needs to be better. He needs to be better, and he should be better because I do think he's a better player than this. Like, it's just, I think all the reports we got from camp is like, oh, Jalen Hurts has been, he's really protecting the football and everything like that. And I do think that's going to be an element we will see as the season goes on. I think familiarity with the timing of the offense. It's a new scheme. I think it's going to take some time. This is the first time you got really pressed by starters for long periods of time with that decision making, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Against an opposing force where they're scheming. You can say, well, he played our defense, right? But they're not scheming for you. They're trying to create they're going off their own scheme stuff. They're trying to install their own scheme. So they're not scheming for specifically what you do. This is the first time that people were scheming specifically for what they thought the Eagles would do. And I do think that that'll take time, KSF. That part of it will take some time to kind of like make the adjustments to. And that's where I have a little confidence that he's going to get this together. But yes, you're right. Those 2 points are correct, sir. Dante said, Becton and Bond impressed me the most in this game. Linebackers look like they will be better this year. Yeah, Mekhi Becton, sorry, guys. There was an inherent advantage for the offensive line in this game, to be honest. And I think that allowed Mekhi Becton to shine because, we're on a slip and slide and you got a guy that can absolutely ragdoll you in terms of strength and size, right? And we saw that play out, right? We saw that realization come to life there with Mekhi Becton. Had a good initial game and went up against really one of the better guys in the league and did a pretty good job there. Zach Bond, I thought, what we didn't see in camp, what we didn't hear reported in camp, we saw happen in the game. And I don't want to go too deep in this because I want to spend time and give this the attention it deserves on an actual video this week. But I told you guys, I said, I'm convinced that when they get into the season, they're going to start overhanging Zach Bond the way they used to do Kaiser White at times. When Gannon was here, they would overhang Kaiser White at times on the defense, right? That weak linebacker would come up and play the jack linebacker role. He would overhang the defense at times. Well, they did that with Zach Bond, and boy, did Zach Bond respond. Zach Bond was really good in that game. N'Kobe's another guy that I thought his performance was a little up and down, but I think overall he played well. He was the lowest graded guy in the defense, which is it's PFF thing. I think tackling, and N'Kobe was guilty of this. I think tackling needs to improve. And I think that's what got N'Kobe graded so lowly, to be quite honest. But I think overall, I think he actually played quite well. Like, I mean, the guy was really there instinctually reading stuff in the run game. I think those two guys played pretty well together, Bond and N'Kobe. Unspoken said, amen, Gay City. The tackling is not where it needs to be. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Unspoken. I was just kind of going on about that. Like, yeah, they got to get better, man. They need to get better in terms of like what they do in terms of preparation for the season. I'm not saying that you got to play like lengthy periods of time in the preseason, but like, man, your practice schedule, if you're not going to play your guys in the preseason, and I know that Vic Dip plays guys a little bit, but like if you're definitely, you need to have joint practices that make sense in terms of like making sure you get live tackling. And you can even make the argument that doesn't fix your tackling because they're probably not letting you go live tackle to the ground. There's no way an opposing team's going to let you do that in a practice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so even that you can make the argument that like you'd see scheme, you'd get tested more, but I don't know that prepares you 100% for tackling. Even with, extended time on the field, get your conditioning better. So, the Eagles practice more. They practice for longer durations of time and increase, I think, the number of practices, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, the conditioning should be better, but that doesn't necessarily mean the tackling's better, right? You're not going over tackling to the ground drills. You're not doing those things anymore. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Unspoken. What's up, Dante? How you doing, buddy? What's up, China? How are you? She said, "Hey, Steve, shout out. Excited to hear your feedback on this game. Expected it to be sloppy, but I'm glad to see them persevere and fight for the W. 100%, China. That was my point too. Is like for all the things that we could talk about, this offense still put up 30 points. This defense was put in a really tough spot. We knew that they were going to score points on us, but if you take away those 6 points that they scored because basically we gave them the ball on our side of the field, if you take away those 6 points." I mean, look at what you're talking about, honestly, China. Like the defense's performance. Like they gave up 29 points. What's that? 24? No. 23? Yeah, 23. Remember, I said if they kept it to 24 points or fewer, I felt like they would have the opportunity to really win this football game. And I would say 6 of those points. I mean, yeah, the defense gave them up, but it was still a net positive because like they were already in field goal range. Trying to say when Saquon slipped, it peed me off so bad. Yeah, I was like looking at the Twitter comments, China. I was like, I gotta get off of Twitter. These people are just they're insane sometimes. Ray said upside for 2024 was the hiring of Kellen Moore's motion and scheme. Of course, Fangio, Becton, Saquon, the combo. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, did I notice that Hurts and SI? Good morning, y'all. Let's remember to hit that like button. Thank you. Hey, appreciate you, Joe. What do you make of Hurts sincerely on having a zero contract during the game? Contact. Zero contact. James, expand upon what you mean. Sorry, I don't think I'm fully catching what you're asking here. Are you asking like against zero blitz? Are you asking me like what I thought versus zero blitz? Are you asking me about him emptying backfield? Are you talking about going empty set? Like, what do you mean by zero contact? Or you mean like them not, not hitting because they're never going to hit quarterbacks in practice. Like that's not going to happen. Are you talking about like not playing him inside of a preseason game and that leading into some like issues with um essentially we were talking about earlier where we talked about the exchange issues that Kellen Moore likes to talk about, making sure the quarterback exchange makes sense. So meaning play calling to Saquon into the snap, all that kind of stuff. And then where I talk about is the sequencing. So we get past that, but now we're talking about the timing of a play. We're talking about staying within schedule of the play. Like I probably need you to expand a little bit more about exactly what it is you're looking for in that question. If you give me a little bit more, James, I'll tell you from what I saw. I haven't had a chance to watch 22 yet, but I'll give you my thoughts from just live game. China said, Coach, are you concerned about Jalen's picks? Expected him to make major changes after how it impacted the Super Bowl outcome. It's year 5 for him. It's just a part of his game. Is it just a part of his game? Well, I will say before last year, I mean, he was pretty conservative and safe with the football, to some extent, too conservative and too safe with the football. I mean, he was literally holding it and the operations weren't clean in terms of, the play there. Last year, I felt like 2022, we saw this amazing season from him to where like he definitely cleaned all that stuff up. You could see him playing in rhythm in the offense a little bit more. It was also his second year inside of that offense, and we saw that mediocre rise. That meteor. He just shot off like a cannon, right? Last year, I thought he got a little reckless with the ball because I think he was taking on the offense a lot. I talked about that at the beginning of last year that, part of the reason Brian Johnson was elevated to that spot was they wanted to devolve some of the offense to Jalen Hurts at the line of scrimmage. Now, they didn't give him full control over protection calls, as we learned from Jason Kelsey and everybody after the season. However, he did have more of a voice on audibles and things like that at the line of scrimmage to set and move things. I thought he got a little reckless last year, and I thought in this game he was reckless with the ball, to be honest, China. I mean, 3 turnover-worthy passes on, that's being a little reckless, to be quite honest. With that said, I will caution to say that, like, Yes, there's like you're concerned a little bit about how long it might take for the offense to set in. I don't think this will be a continuation problem with Jalen throughout the entirety of the season, but you do wonder how long it's going to take for that offense to catch its consistency and its flow. And are we going to get caught in the early season because we're still trying to get there offensively? And I think that's what people forget is like, yes, I think Jalen at this point's got the playbook down, but there's a timing and a sequences, sequencing to plays. And like there were times where you could see when pressure gets brought to his face directly up the gut, the timing and sequences of the play breaks down. We got to be better. Jalen's got to be better in particular. I think Kellen needs to do more though too. Like I don't know if there's enough tape yet, China, for them to really dive into analytics of the way guys are playing us, but they do need to get more specific about when it's not obvious blitz situation, like a third down situation where you're going to face pressure, like 3rd and 5 or above. You're going to face some pressure there. We need to look at the structure of when teams are bringing it against us, getting pressure against us, how they're getting that pressure against us, and then like we need to evaluate play calling. If there's a tendency here that we can pick up on, we need a design. We need more design. I even put this out on Twitter where I made my post. I said Jalen needs to play better, but to be fair, Kellen's got to do a little bit more with the design here because while we were definitely on our cues when it came to like blitzing, when they tried to blitz us, we ate them up in this game. When they got pressure that wasn't necessarily facilitated through a blitz, the results were different. And then, we saw some of the other information that got leaked out of there, like Jalen Hurts' performance without motion. It was a little sketchy. But to be fair, we know Jalen Hurts can throw from the pocket. We know that Jalen Hurts can throw the football without motion. I don't think that's the issue. I think that's still a playbook issue. I think that's still like a learning of the timing, the sequencing of plays. Still, I still think that there's nuances there being worked out. And I think that reared its ugly head when we weren't freeing up guys. When we weren't using motion to get guys free, I think those things kind of reared their head. Those are things that you hopefully get worked out in the month of September. By the time we hit October, we should see those numbers skewing back towards the median, the average of the NFL. Dante say 1, Saquon is good at football. 2, Quinyon Mitchell is the real deal. 3, was shocked we didn't use the middle of the field more. We weren't very successful when we tried. We were trying to work the middle of the field versus pressure, and I didn't love the concepts, Dante. Dante say, hey, everyone, leave a like and subscribe. Appreciate you, buddy. What do you think of Hurts and Sirianni having zero communication during the game? I don't know that they have exactly zero communication. I think what they're alluding to is that Sirianni's not involved in play calling, right? So he fully diverted the offense to Kellen Moore, which means previously, even though he had a coordinator, when it came to situational calls. So we're talking about like going forward on 4th down and stuff like that. I think he actually fully devolved the offense to Kellen Moore. So there's a really Kellen Moore's decisions. Nick's not doing that. Nick's managing the game from, that bird's eye view. He's not involved in the day-to-day stuff like that. Like in terms, when I say day-to-day, he's involved in the day-to-day in terms of preparation and stuff, but he's not involved in the day-to-day when it comes to like what's happening on the field in terms of the play calling and stuff right now. So we probably need more clarification, James, about that and what's meant and what Nick's role is on game day. But from what I'm gathering, they're saying is that it's been fully diverted into, out of Nick's hands and it's into, basically an experienced coordinator's hands. So like, when you got a guy like Brian Johnson, Nick's going to have a role there in terms of like 2-minute offense and like how they handle 3rd down and 4th down calls and stuff like that. But I think we got a more experienced guy. Nick's going to defer to that guy unless there's, failures. I mean, if the Eagles start having crazy, downward trends in production from where they've been in the previous, then you'll probably see Nick kind of take over aspects of that again. But I don't really think, I don't think that's going to be an issue, James. I really don't. Like, to be honest with you, you don't need too many people in the ear of your quarterback. Go back to 2020 and Doug Peterson. What happened to Carson Wentz? Carson Wentz and Doug got at one another. They kind of broke down the relationship a little bit in 2020, but you also had so many people in Jalen's ear, or not Jalen, in Carson's ear. From Rich Scrangrello to Doug to Marty Morningwig, who's an old friend of Jalen's. Jalen spoke highly of Marty and what Marty did for him, but I'm pretty sure Marty still had some input and probably said some things from time to time to Carson as well. even though he wasn't mainly tasked with Carson, he was mainly tasked with Jalen's development. Then you got, Press Taylor, who was there as the offensive coordinator. I just think that they had Andrew Brenner, who was like an analytics guy. There's just entirely too many voices in the quarterback's ear that season. And to me, like, you need to have one or two key people. That's it. And I think in this particular situation, it's going to be Doug Nussmeier, the quarterback coach, and then Kellen Moore, the coordinator. Sorry, guys. I'm talking that like my voice is starting to lose my voice a little bit. K-City, I trust your analysis above all context. Creators, appreciate that, man. Thank you, guys. PFS uses zero context. Yeah, they do. Sometimes you're right, True. Well, sometimes I don't trust what they're reporting at all. Dante said it's week 1, so hopefully it's only up from here. Outside of those 2 bad first drives, we scored or got points every drive until halfway through the third quarter. Yeah, we finally had our first punt. Yeah, I mean, offensively, they did a good job once they settled in. My guy Joe says, what's your impression of the defense overall? They obviously gave up a lot of big plays, but I was impressed with the red zone defense holding them to 2 field goals and 1 touchdown. Yeah, I mean, when the field shortened up and you got a bend don't break style defense, like they did exactly what the concept of the defense was, which was to bend but you don't break. I thought Vic got a little aggressive at times. I think the field conditions play a role in your defense, your defensive line in particular. Your front 7 can be impacted by those field conditions. We got to see though, like you give them a pass for this game just because of it's week 1. NFL conditioning as you get later in games. I think guys' feet get heavier, their legs get heavier. You know what I mean? Like things like that happen to them, Joe. But also the field conditions I think played a role there. So you give them a pass for week 1, but yeah, if we see a continuation of like, oh boy, if Vic's not scheming up pressure, we're just not getting pressure, then I think we got a little bit of a worry. There's a little bit of a situation to worry about here. Crawley said Hurts has to be better. Same here. I thought he'd get 1 tutty, but 3. Man, I'm so excited for this freaking team. Laugh out loud. Yeah. Same thing, China. I was like, when I was betting it, I was like, oh, he'll definitely get 1. I wish I would have put on 2 or more, or 3 or more. I would have banked on that. 73 people in the chat. Make sure y'all like the video. Appreciate you, China. Bond surprised me. Dude's a tackling machine. Nothing but hustle and effort in this game. What's up, Jacob? Yeah, you could see that. You could see why Vic was a pretty big fan of him. Then, it didn't dawn on me that him and Andrew Van Ginkel were actually teammates in Wisconsin. I didn't realize that. I should have realized it because, I mean, they both played there. But it shocked me that they were teammates. But not only that they were teammates there, they're friends. Him and Andrew Van Ginkel are like really close, apparently. I didn't know that about those two. And it's just ironic that the guy that, when we signed, when we first made the signing during during the offseason, during free agency, I had made a post on Twitter where I was trying to calm everyone down because there was a lot of people. Twitter's a different audience from what we get here, guys. We got to just be fully aware of it, guys. Twitter and audience we get here is very different. Twitter and YouTube audiences are not the same. But people were definitely like, oh man, like this cannot be the answer at linebacker. And to be fair, at the time, I wasn't thinking this was a major answer at linebacker. I thought he was going to play that Van Ginkel role where he's going to be the 3rd guy in your linebacking group, but he will have a role on the team and he can overhang and rush the quarterback the way Van Ginkel did. And it's just ironic that we were comparing him to Van Ginkel, almost like sunning him to Van Ginkel. And the whole time they're like really close friends. It's like, all right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to just say that he's going to play a role similar to Van Ginkel and not start making it seem like he's some kind of, generic copy of Van Ginkel. But yeah. I mean, he played a pretty big role for us, and Van Ginkel had a heck of a game, by the way, for Minnesota yesterday. Same here, Jacob. Somebody said we're calling him Saquon now. Laugh out loud. That's funny. Can we please trade back for Hassan? We need that guy. But I did like Vic blitzing at spots. Yeah. He got more aggressive than I thought he was going to get, Dante. It was a little bit of a change, right? Saquon. Yeah, that's I like that nickname. Big picture, after the collapse late last year, the start of the game could have been a good excuse to give up. They refused to quit and they overcame all the adversity and won the game. Good point, Joe. Yeah, exactly. Like, I get why people are like, oh man, not this crap again. Cause like, boy, man, it was early on. It was rough on Twitter, But I was like, all right, just hold on. Let's give them a chance to fix this. Week 1, we're in an environment we're not used to playing in. There's a lot to adjust to. New schemes, although we know Vic's scheme is not drastically different from the guys who were running a form of his scheme, but still, there's still some differences in the calls and stuff. So yeah, I think overall they did a good job. I agree with you. Surprise lack of running back screens like Andy Reid, Westbrook, McCoy, Shady, with backs like Saquon and Kenny G. I'm wondering, Ray, if we see that a little bit later on. I get exactly what you're saying. And I think it's a good pressure beater, especially like if you're can pick up on certain tendencies of teams when they want to start getting that upfield penetration against you. That's a good counter to that. Quarterback, just basically letting that, let the offensive line let the pressure leak towards the quarterback, especially when a guy like Hurts that can easily back and then dump the ball. Tight end screen, running back screen, those things, yeah. Where we used to utilize that outside bubble and tunnel screen, I think that could be a nice mix to add into it. They're still going to use bubble and tunnel screens from time to time. I can tell you that right now, guys. But, if you can blend and mix that with tight end and running back screens and make it to where it's hard to predict which one we're going to do at any given time. Yeah, I think you have something there. Yes, that is what really excites me. Everybody gave their all to get that W. Yeah, they fought back. They fought back from a really in situation that wasn't ideal, to say the least, right? It was not an ideal start to the game. Do you think the field conditions impacted the tackling? A little bit. I don't want to give them a complete opt-out of how bad it was at times, China. But yeah, I definitely think that when you're coming down to play in the flats, so, you're coming down to cover the short zone and you're a defensive back, you're coming in from the safety level. When you got slick surfaces, it's kind of hard to stop and get yourself into position to make a tackle. Like, I definitely think that plays a little bit of a role there. Dad said they need better communication. They didn't get much playing time together. It's true. They didn't get a chance to really play in the preseason together. The preseason knocks the rust off. Greenbacker 98 said, if we don't talk about the field conditions, then shut up. Got to also give Jacobs credit. He's a heck of a running back. Yeah, he was. Josh Jacobs had a really good game. Like, it's unfortunate that Love got hurt in this game. I didn't think Love was really on. I think he missed some opportunities, to be real. So did Jalen, to be quite honest. But I do think that team with Jordan Love at quarterback, that's a playoff team. That looked like a playoff team to me, man. Now, defensively, I don't know what to make of Halfley. If we're giving the Eagles guys a pass, I think we got to give Halfley and Green Bay a pass as well. But it wasn't a great, it wasn't a great start for them, to say the least. So we'll have to see how they kind of adjust over the next few weeks, because they're going to really need that defense to step up now, because they got a bit of a question at quarterback now. Yeah, they got a little problem there. A lot of great skill position players. I wouldn't be shocked if you don't see Jacobs getting, become like a real focal point of their offense for a few weeks now. Oh, yeah, we did not go against any scrubs. Yeah, they're good. That's a good team. They projected Green Bay to be a Super Bowl team. Green Bay is a top 10 team with Love. They are definitely a good team. Yeah, I don't know if Greenbacker, if I'd put them in. I don't know who was projecting that. To be fair, if you say someone projected it, it only takes one person to project something, and that becomes a true statement. But I think most people think Green Bay is a good team with outside shot at Super Bowl potential. I thought they were a playoff team with Jordan Love at quarterback. I think they're definitely a playoff team. But got to keep in mind, they came on late in the season. People freaking out about mistakes during a week 1 win is hilarious. There were some bad mistakes, but 2 new coordinators and no preseason can do that. Let's worry if it's happening in week 5. Yeah, you always want to give September. My only fear is you don't want these things to cost you a football game in September. But with that said, Will, you're right. You don't really know anything until you get into October. That point, like, the conditioning should be increased. These guys should not be still missing tackles down in the flats the way they are. The offense and Jalen and Kellen, I think that sequencing between the exchange into, like, being in rhythm, and then also, like, essentially playing in schedule. You're on schedule with the offense, and you're not playing so much off schedule football. I think that's going to help you, right? And I do think that's an area for Kellen, critiquing Kellen. I think he needs to do more to get Jalen into a rhythm at times. Like, once you get Jalen into a rhythm, that guy he can carve the field up on you if you get Jalen into a rhythm. Like getting that guy established into a rhythm, I think is important because he can absolutely dice up the football field when he's in rhythm. This defense did a phenomenal job for being new everywhere. We expect it way worse. Yeah, it's true. Give these guys 6 games to get it together, and they should be balling out by then. So what they say, man, you never really know who anyone is until you get to November. Green Bay's defense was ranked 6th. That was last year, man. New coordinator who got canned, by the way. Don't always believe rankings. The back-to-back empty sets were making me upset. I want to see more Shipley and Barkley in 2 halfback sets. Shipley looks like he could be dangerous if used right. The pony sets, Big Ed. Yeah, I've been calling for pony sets since Doug was here. I just got tired of saying it, Big Ed. I got tired of saying that, bro. What's up, Preach? How you doing, buddy? Quinyon Mitchell was talking more ish than CJ. I thought dude was quiet. Nah, I mean, if you remember back in Jacob, back in camp, early on in camp, AJ had kind of said, like, man, this kid talks a lot of trash. He was saying about how he likes that. Ermo said, hey, Gate, I love your show, but can we get Maddox out of the lineup and then put DeJean in? Maddox is cooked. Ermo, I don't have any control over that, sir. Don't put that on me. I don't set our roster, sir. I think they went with experience there. You can make an argument that they probably should have gone with the upside and just, did the Band-Aid mode. Put him in there and rip the Band-Aid off. Let him get experience, right? It is a shame because, there was a time where Avonte Maddox was a very gifted nickel corner and he was very twitchy and fast and he played physical for a smaller guy, which ultimately got him hurt. It's sad to see players when they start losing a bit of a step. And it does, to me, it does look like Avonte has lost a little bit of that twitchiness. And he's not nearly as twitchy as he was. Now, to be fair, he could still have some lingering things going on with injuries that as time goes on, maybe potentially as he gets reverted back into a role where he's not playing as much, that could potentially heal itself. I mean, obviously you're not going to heal yourself if you're playing, 40, 50, 60 snaps a game. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, you're just going to get worse as the season goes on in terms of like your health and your body. But, if they pull that back a little bit, then yeah, potentially, or that step is just gone. It happens to everybody. Time is undefeated. James said, coach, quarterback not having communication. Coach, quarterback not having no communication. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I got, once I saw your subsequent question, it made more sense to me. You're talking about on the sideline. Yeah, no, I think the communication aspect is being done between Kellen and then Doug Nussmeier. It sure will, exactly. 29% on 3rd down. I hope Rodgers takes Maddox. Spit. Can't watch Maddox getting cooked anymore. Spot. I get it now, Ermel. I don't know, man. I don't know how. Like, the problem with that is you need to know the calls. There's some things there that have to be done. And I think that'd be a little bit of a panic mode if you bounce Isaiah Rodgers in there. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, it is an option you can take. He has the movement skills. He has the body profile to play inside. He's just not. He's not overly experienced at the NFL level playing inside as a nickel. And, I'm a little concerned. Now, the good news is that he's been playing towards the boundary. So he knows he understands to some extent the calls because normally he knows the nickel and like when they're passing off calls, he should know that aspect of it a little bit. But we'll have to see, Ermel. Like, there are some things when it comes to the calls that have to be made there. Like, you have to understand those calls and what your responsibility is once that call gets made. More 2 halfback sets in general with our halfback involved could really benefit Jalen. Still balling out and running to his right, undecisive on his runs, drives me bonkers. Yeah, I think teams are kind of making that, though. The thing, though, Daz, in terms of rolling to the right, I think they're forcing some of it. And now I think they're trying to – you see the opposite happening. Like before, teams were forcing him to roll right. Now you see teams are trying to take it away because he's so good at doing that. They can do things. They can use semi boots and things like that to the left. I mean, they opened up under center, which was kind of interesting to see that, Daz. They were under center to open the game. That's, if you put him under center, little play action with a semi boot, that can get you going to your left and kind of help facilitate those things. There's things that you can do from a schematic and play calling standpoint to ease that, is what I'm saying. Teams are so ready for him to run to the right. Hey, Gate, you think we can run Barkley all year between 2024 times, or is that too much? Probably too much, Ermal, to be honest. That probably is too much, to be honest about it. But I mean, it shows you that situationally, when we're in, like, we need to reset the offense, or we have a 10 plus point lead and we're in the fourth quarter, we know we can lean on Saquon, right? Now, ideally, you want to mix it up a little bit. You want to get some other guys involved in the run game too. You don't want to, you don't want to cause injury here. I think that's the concern. But yeah, I think you'll see it. I think you'll see it get ticked down a little bit. I think ideally the Eagles want him between 16 and 18 carries in a game, unless you got a double digit lead you're protected in the fourth quarter. Then, of course, it's going to inflate your numbers a little bit. I've said it 100 times. My favorite thing about Hurts in 22 was how well he took care of the football. Ever since that Super Bowl fumble, he is constantly turning the ball over and is frustrating. Yeah, to be fair, though, Daz, on that Super Bowl fumble, there was a pretty blatant face mask that was missed there that kind of caused him to open his hands and let the ball go, to be honest. But you're right. Last year, he was reckless with the ball. So if we just take it past the Super Bowl and just talk about last year he got kind of reckless with the football. I think installing a new offense and it being week one kind of exacerbated that situation. And I think a lot of us were caught off guard because all the reporting from camp was like, wow, Jalen's doing a dang good job protecting the football. So I think it caught us off guard that he ended up throwing it wasn't even so much the 2 picks as it was the 3 turnover worthy passes. That was to me, the larger issue at hand. I expect that to come down. Like, he's not going to be flawless. Every quarterback makes a mistake in the read here and there. But yeah, I mean, you can't be reckless, man. Like, throwing across your body into the end zone, especially when, like, if you look to the corner of the end zone, there was some, number one, there was space to get a few yards there, but number two, there was, some space to potentially try to throw down and get into a goal line situation. But yeah. Run the ball through Saquon, let Jalen manage. Talent, 7-minute offense is spectacular. Joe said, after watching the red zone all day yesterday, it's obvious that most of the teams in the league are not in game shape. A lot of teams started off very slow, so Eagles are no different than most of the NFL. It's true, Joe. Yeah, you could see a few teams definitely wore down in the second half of football games. Yeah, I hate betting the first week, man. Betting the first week is the worst because it's just like, I don't care how good you are at betting. It's so freaking unpredictable. Like, I was at least smart enough to stay away from that Cincinnati and New England game. But if I had betted it, I would have bet Cincinnati. But I stayed away from it. Like, I was like, man, the contract struggles they've had there in Cincinnati, they're talking about that, they're not going to, Justin's not going to play the whole game. Not Justin. You get what I'm saying? He's not, T. Higgins is out. Like, I was like, oh man, their offensive line's a little beat up. They've lost pieces. Tyler Boyd's gone. The running back they had, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's gone. I was like, oh man, I don't love that game. Like, New England's not a particularly good offense, but they do got a decent defense. And that game felt like a trap game to me, Joe. I was like, Cincinnati's a notorious slow starter. If I was betting, I would have bet Cincinnati on that one, but thank God I stayed away from that game. I was like, I'm going to stay away from this game because something tells me this game's it's not going to go the way that people think. Hey, Gate, how much do we put on the field and how much are you worried about our pass rushers not getting sacks? If it happens again next week, I would be a little bit more concerned that by the trade deadline, we're probably going to have to bring somebody in here. But I will say that, you can look to say, like, okay, mitigating situation with field conditions, week one conditioning, things like that can have a role in your pass rush. But yeah, I mean, I was expecting Bryce Huff to be a little bit more impactful than he was in this game. I mean, Josh Sweat got a pressure. Zach Bond found his way to the quarterback a couple times. Jalen Carter was able to be disruptive. So, I mean, I was expecting him to at least, probably, given the field conditions, he's not going to be as good as he can be. But yeah, I guess you could make the case, though, when you're like a Nolan Smith and a Bryce Huff type, when your game is so predicated on that explosiveness, that explosion, that speed, maybe they get affected more because they're not as nuanced with their hand use and things like that as some of the other guys are. But, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see, Errol. I mean, if we have this problem again in Atlanta, then I think it is time to be not necessarily that it's time to give up on things, but we should be concerned at that point because we're going to need to turn around by week 3 or 4, or else we're probably going to be definitely in the trade market to get an edge rusher. Dad said, be nice if we learn how to throw seam passes to Goddard and use him more. What do you want them to talk about if he's not calling the plays? Yeah. It's the thing is like, I don't see what Nick would need to talk to him about. You know, I think before what they're picking up on True Will's like when Jalen would like throw an interception or something like that, like, Nick would coach him pretty hard, to be quite honest. But it's like, but that was also Nick's offense. And while Nick wasn't calling the plays, Nick did still have some situational duties in terms of play calling. You know, you get into weird situations when it comes to 2-minute offense. It's hard to know exactly who's calling your 2-minute offense. You can have different coaches that call different things, but definitely situationally, like on 3rd down, 4th down, stuff like that, like Nick would have the authority on what play was going to be run there. I don't think that's the case this year, True Will. I mean, me personally, what it sounds like, they've never outright stated anything, but what it sounds like to me is that the full offense in terms of scheme, game planning, and game planning, Nick still has a role in it, but scheme, game planning, and then play calling, that's falling on, the shoulders of Kellen Moore. That's a Kellen Moore thing. So I think that's what people picked up on, is that Nick wasn't coaching Jalen hard like he's done in the past on these turnovers and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, he's also like, he's got to coach the whole team now. Like he's an executive coach. Like he was titled an executive coach before, but he still had some responsibilities that weren't exactly the same as an executive coach. It was like a weird in-between thing. He's a true executive coach right now. So like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that he's going to be on Jalen's case like that, because it's, what I mean? It's a little different. The roles are. First week defense made statements, hit or be hit. Still wanting to see if Philly can be that, at least dominate the line of scrimmage. What's up, J Sid? How you doing, buddy? That said, on a positive note, I saw Hurts throw to the running back more this game than I've seen the past 2 years. And Dad said, yeah, I got to give Kenny G some love. He made some nice plays. I can't remember. I think I was on Tone's show, and Tone had asked me like who I thought was underrated or was going to have a kind of an underrated season or would benefit the most from Saquon Barkley being in the offense. And I gave him an answer that shocked him. He didn't see it coming. And I was like, Kenny G. And he's like, what? I didn't see that one coming. Explain. Walk me through this one, Steve. And I explained to him why. I thought the pressure was going to be taken off him. I think that when you got a guy that can be like a scat back like Kenny G, then you got kind of the guys more of a one cut. And to be fair, Kenny G does that pretty well too, one cut runner. But, you got more of the scat back traditional role for Kenny G. He's a guy that's a decent pass protector. He's not great. I think Barkley's the better pass protector of the two, but they're both decent at it. I just thought like Kenny G was going to be one of those guys that you're going to take a lot of the workload off of him. And I think it's going to pay dividends. I honestly do. I think he's a guy that needed to have the role pulled back a little bit. And by pulling the role back a little bit, he might actually kind of like, it might elevate his play, to be quite honest. I had a feeling that would happen. He had a really hard-nosed run in that game. Barkley going to go off, feed the beast. I think 20 to 25 touches a game, keep them fresh for the playoffs. Hey, Gate, do you see Devin White really getting traded? And if he's here, what role do you see him in? Yeah, we kind of talked about that last week. Ermel, it's a great question. I'm not too sure that I personally have the answer for it. I questioned that myself last week, where I said, like Devin White, heck of a luxury to have, man. But I mean, he's not a special teams player. You can make the case that Oren Burks is an experienced guy that he can step in and play if someone gets injured, and he's a dang good special teams player. So I don't know the role of Devin White if he's not starting. And then we talked about, well, maybe, we talked about overhanging Zach Bond. If you use Zach Bond overhang like you used to use Andrew Van Ginkel, then you could bring kind of like Devin White in as the third linebacker from time to time with N'Kobe. You could do things like that. You could potentially even overhang Devin White as well and keep Zach Bond and N'Kobe off ball. You could do things like that here and there. It helps you mitigate some of the problems you're having with the pass rush too. You could stand them up over the A and B gaps, things like that to kind of, to get your positioning. You have different alignments from your linebackers. So like, say you got one guy lined up in the 20. 20 just means he's between the guard and center guys. Most of your linebackers in today's NFL line up about 3.5 yards off the line of scrimmage, somewhere in that area. So you got one of the guys is in like a 20, and then you take like a Zach Bond or Devin White and you put them over the A or B gap on the opposite side. Okay. So if you have a true nose tackle, then he's probably going to be kind of over the B gap on the opposite side of where you have the 20 technique, because then you got that one linebacker's in the 20 technique, and you have the nose tackle that'll play opposite sides of the A gap there for one another. So then you're bringing pressure with the other guy. Then you can overhang or move outside. You can either overhang or move outside. It doesn't have to overhang. It doesn't have to be on ball. But you can move them outside into like a 60 technique, which means basically we're heads up over the tight end area. You could do that with your linebackers. So you have 3 linebackers on the field, and you can use these different formations to kind of, get the goal there. So basically, you got a 20 who's playing about 3.5 yards true off ball. Then you got a guy that's playing inside the B gap about 1.5 yards off, old school football, the way we used to line up linebackers. And then you got guys in like a 60 technique. He's playing like, it's not really a technique, it's like a 60. So basically they're 3.5 yards off ball, but they're out by the tackle or by the tight end area, kind of. You could do things like that. Especially, especially if you got like if your guy that's in the 20 technique is towards the weak side of your formation. So you got a 20 technique towards the weak side of your formation. You got a nose tackle towards the strong side of your formation. Then you got your, a strong linebacker inside one of the B gaps. And then you got a 60 technique playing on what other side you want to play them on. Normally you're going to play them towards probably the space, towards the field side, weak side. But on top of that, we refuse to give Wentz weapons. Yeah, it's true. How do you feel about the edge rushers? I think some of his stuff was, probably could be chalked up to somewhat the field conditions, but still, I mean, Jalen Carter found a way to get pressure. Josh Sweat found a way to get pressure. Brandon Grant had a pretty good game. Like, other guys found a way of getting pressure. So, like, can't completely excuse it, but understandable. Like, I think shoe wear and I think proper grip and footing was a problem there. But they need to show up. Next week's pretty big for us. We need guys that show up. Bond shows promising talent and Dean. Morning, Eagles fans. What's up, Jameer? How you doing, buddy? Richard said, I didn't realize how much breakaway speed Barkley has. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely explosive, right? Yeah. He gets up to 0 to 60 fast. Everybody was confused about Bond signing everybody. Shout out to the defense. Looked a lot like start of last year. This can't be good. Nah, I disagree, man. I think last year, if we would have done that, we would have lost the game. Early on, we had some miscues and hiccups. We got to keep in mind, Jeff, it's week 1. You're installing a new offense. While the defense isn't drastically new, the concepts aren't drastically new. The calls and things like that are new. Vic's calls are different. Vic does play a little bit more of 3, 6, and 9 when he rotates out of that too high. So, I mean, he is a little different from what we saw from Desai, what we saw from Gannon. Like, it's still week 1, man. Conditioning's not there yet. You see that across the league. Conditioning's not there yet. Tackling was an issue across the league. So I still think it's a little early to judge anything, man. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. Sorry, guys. Phone's going off. Barkley could have had 4 touchdowns if they didn't use that tush push. As much as I love the tush push with Barkley in the backfield, I'm hoping that they start handing it to Barkley and let the line run block. But PFF, laugh out loud. Yeah, Brandon. I can't stand PFF sometimes. Hey, Green Bay at 2025 second for can he flick it? Can he pick it? Good play there, P.I. It took me a second, but I caught on to what you were doing there. Yo, Gate, what do you think of Jordan Davis's performance? Conditioning. Philly Big Fish. I think conditioning. They clearly. I got to look at his snap count. Let me see a snap count real quick. I thought later in the game, all these guys are having some issues right now with conditioning. And to be fair, it's league wide. I'm not just challenging I'm not just challenging Jordan Davis. Snap count, Philly versus Green. Well, it's actually Green Bay versus Philly, but they'll figure it out. All right, I'm going to take a look real quick on Eagles Wire and see what they have in terms of the snap counts. All right, guys. So defensively, Zach Bond played all 67 snaps. Let's get down to these defensive tackles. Jalen Carter played 51 snaps, which is 76%. Jordan Davis played 35 snaps, which was 52%. So roughly about 50% of the snaps. Bryce Huff only played 45% of the snaps. That's a little concerning. Moro Jamo, 14 snaps, 21%. I thought Moro Jamo had a really good pass rush in that game, by the way. Booker played 8 snaps, 12%. Where's my guy at? Man, I'm missing somebody. Milton Williams, there he is. 28, which was 42% of the snaps. Yeah, I think conditioning needs to be a little better. Philly Big Fish, to be honest. I still think that they got to work through some things there, and it's early in the season. A guy Jordan Davis's size, I think it's going to take a couple weeks to get into true football shape. I would continue to play him around 30, 35 snaps because I think he needs that. It's not an overutilization of him, to be quite fair. I think it's a proper amount to work and get him into game shape. And I think by October, yeah, I mean, because I thought his performance was a little up and down. I mean, when he was on, it was almost impossible to run on us. When he was off, he was getting one-on-one block, which created all kinds of problems in terms of them being able to pull through and get guards up on the second level, offensive linemen on the second level. Dad said we got to get DeJean up to speed and get him in the nickel. I think that'll happen sometime this year. Pastor Drew was good, buddy. He says Maddox injuries caught up with him. He's already undersized. We need Cooper. That position is about depth, though. Someone is always going to get dinged up. Pan out. All eyes on Huff next game. Jurgens needs to clean up those snaps. I mean, that's a. I mean, they will. Regal Eagle over time, they're going to. That's more on coaching, in my opinion. You only had one true real practice in camp against an opposing team. They're scheming, and they weren't even scheming. They're running their scheme, so they weren't really scheming for what you do. But one true opposing defense to play against, which essentially was the joint practice with New England. So I mean that is a little bit of an issue there. Like they got to be a little bit more mindful about how they're doing that. I think when you get out there and now teams are scheming for you, it's a little different. And I think it'll take a couple weeks to adjust. But the exchange, when we talk about clean exchange, what he's talking about with a clean exchange, I take it a step further. I go from clean exchange into rhythm, into essentially from your rhythm, then you're working on basically staying in structure of offense. Like those things have got to be cleaned up over the next couple of weeks. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact of the limited snaps that the offense has played against competition that's game planning for them. Avenue can't tackle anymore. Plain and simple. Rodgers made it clear he doesn't want to play the slot cornerback in an earlier interview. Yes, Huff better show up because we know where Cousins will be. Yeah, that's a good point, Antonio. You know that Cousins isn't really going to be a guy who wants to elude rush. Isaiah Rodgers can't play the nickel. He's too small. Cousins is a statue. I was a little disappointed that Smith got to play, but Hunt was a healthy scratch. Yeah, I mean, it'll take time to get Hunt up to speed, but eventually he's going to factor in. He's going to factor in. I got a feeling he's going to factor into the pass rush. I was more so looking at the snap counts. I'm a little surprised at who was Patrick Johnson not getting any real snaps defensively. I thought he had a pretty good camp and a pretty good preseason. Pittsburgh did a good job running those waggles with Fields. I don't think Maddox was the best Friday, but I don't think if Cooper or any other guy on the roster plays better at nickel, we see Avante rebound more. But I thought CJ played worse. Oh, my bad, James. I just noticed you sent a super chat, buddy. Hang on, I'm going to pull that up. Appreciate you, James. Says, awesome content creator. I learned something new every episode. Keep up the great work, brother. Go Birds. Hey, man, I appreciate the $5 super chat. James, and the kind words, man. Thank you so much. Regal Eagle said, I think Jalix Hunt will be a better player than Nolan Smith. Potentially. Even if he's not better in terms of being the twitchy edge rusher type, if Nolan develops his, toolbox as a pass rusher, I think Jalen is going to be the better all around guy because I think while Nolan is an underrated run defender, he's better than people think for an undersized guy. Jalix is violent. It's setting the edge. Like I got to give that guy a little bit there. A major missed face mask. I still have screenshots to this day. Yeah, they definitely missed that call in the Super Bowl. Me too. CJGJ was cheeks in that game. Very disappointing. Q has to stay on the field, period. He's the best cornerback on the team. Vic just will figure out who can play slot other than Q. Pastor Drew said, saw about 80% of the quarterbacks play worse than Jalen. So can't be bad news. Yeah, I mean, there's things to clean up, but I mean, Jalen's, yeah, like he didn't have his best game. That's obvious. We all saw that, right? I mean, not ideal situation to play in. We had some struggles, new offense. I still think we're working out some kinks with stuff, but in the same breath that we have to say that he didn't have his best game and discernibly played bad at times, he's also a pretty big reason why we won the game. Like that's true too. Like, you know, he's a pretty big reason for it. I think that side of the conversation is kind of getting left off by a lot of people. Hey, Coach, great analysis. Appreciate you, Jeffrey. How you doing, buddy? Taekwon, what's good, buddy? He says, what's up, Gates? What's your view on the team this year? What's up with Jalen throwing into double coverages all the time? I think they're still learning. Like offensively, I still think there's some things that are going on, Taekwon, in terms of how you build rhythm into the offense. I still think that while they have the playbook down and stuff like that, there's still a natural rhythm that occurs, and I think adjusting to the play calling and things like that, I think it'll naturally occur there. With that said, like yeah, I mean Jalen's got to be better with his decision making. The view on this team, I think they're a playoff team. I think we look like a playoff team to me. Are we going to be a Super Bowl contender? Depends on how. Like I think the offense is going to eventually get it together. And they're going to be really good. It depends on the defense, right? It depends on these young guys. We look more athletic defensively. We look way more athletically defensively than we did last year. So ESP for years has been tracking all starting quarterback throws since Wentz. So we all know Hurts was going to throw the pick. But do you like the quarterback stat line in training camp? Not really. Not really, Dante, because it's vanilla offense. I don't know that it really tells you that much. I think we put the beats on the Falcons like 40 points. I'll take it. What's up, Show Enough? How you doing, buddy? I blame the field for the D line, but the Falcons game says all. Yeah, Pastor Drew, I think that's true, bro. I think you're right there. What's up, Gate? Go Birds. What's up, Eagles Playbook Podcast? How you doing, man? They had to ride the hot hand last game. Hall of Fame Saquon was on display. Everybody will. Yeah, you know there's going to be everybody will get theirs. You know there'll be an adjustment defensively, man. They're going to come for them. It's only a matter of time before they start queuing in on Saquon. What's up, Jason? How you doing, buddy? Says Gate. What's good, brother? Heck of a win, and I hate we don't play preseason. Yeah. I would talk about it more, Jason, but I just not. I can't do anything about it, and I don't think that me talking about it is going to change anything. I think we all kind of know what it is. Miss Ash, how you doing? So the receivers are fast. Glad to have young legs in the secondary to keep up with them. Yeah, absolutely. Steve, as a military man, it is called delegating responsibility, no micromanaging Kellen. Let him handle it. Pretty sure Kellen told Hurts, and it doesn't take Nick to come in over and say the same thing. Yeah, exactly. I think you get too many people inside of his head at that point. And like, I agree with you, Antonio. I can't remember. I know you served, Antonio. I don't remember what branch. I was Navy. Probably the most bureaucratic branch of all the branches. And yes, you're right. Like delegating is it's a given in the Navy, sir. I don't know how it is in other units of service, but I know my cousin, he was a Marine. I had a couple of buddies from college and stuff. They were Army, and seems that we all had pretty similar experiences with that, right? If you are a E4 to E5, welcome to having everything delegated to you to take care of. Caleb said, "What's up, Gate? What's up, Caleb? How you doing, buddy? The O-line guru. We look solid. Hurts needs to clean it up. Better first and second down play calling. Big eye on the pass rush. Everybody, everywhere else, solid." Richie said, "Hey, Gates, can you still have timing routes while in shotgun? Why isn't Hurts ever placed under center? Well, they opened up under center, Richie. They did open up under center, but I think I know what you're talking about. I think you're talking about from a passing perspective, not just running it. Some quarterbacks do not prefer to be put under center. There was a big debate back in the early 2000s between Brady and Peyton. Brady didn't mind being placed under center back then. Manning did not. Peyton didn't like it. Peyton wanted to be in the shotgun. Some guys don't like their backs turned to the defense. So if you're going to play fake and things like that, play action pass, you got to turn your back to the defense. And now you got to turn your head back around and get a read on everything. Some guys don't like that. To me, I think it's all about the way you handle it, right? Like if you're under center and you're going into a play action where you build in a semi boot or a boot off of that, then I think that kind of makes up for the time that your back's turned to the defense in terms of the timing of the play. So, I mean, like there's, that what I'm proposing to you, Richie, is essentially what you see from Shanahan's early offenses. Shanahan's really been a shotgun guy too now, but Shanahan's early offenses were like that. Sean McVay's offenses are like that, and all their downline, all their coaches that are coming out of their coaching tree now, they're both part of that as well. What's up, Mon? He says the best Eagles content creator by far, Gates, actually knows his stuff and doesn't clickbait. Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Unspoken says, was Jalen Carter effective? Yeah, he was being held the whole game. I think Jalen Carter had a decent game. I will say the whole defensive line conditioning, we're going to see. Jalen Carter's playing a lot of snaps. To be fair, Carter's getting a taste of what it was like to be Fletch for the last couple of years. Played 51 snaps, 76%. I got to tell you, there were times where Fletch was playing 60, 70 snaps a game. We'll see. I think it's going to uptick that way, Unspoken. We'll see. Keep Devin White for depth. Zach Bond was dang good. No wonder he was the Eagles' first free agent signing. Yeah, he's a good player. Unspoken, Carter has a monster second half. He was held or doubled every play. Rewatch it. Yeah, he was held a lot. Yeah, they got away with quite a bit of the holding there in that game. How do you think our edge rushers do? Great question, Jose. In terms of like how they did in that game, I thought the outside edge rush was. I'll give you guys something conceptually from a scheming standpoint. And Mr. Sandman, if you're in the chat, if you're watching this, or if you watch it later on the replay, if you want to put some insight into this, I know you played on the nose, you played defensive tackle at the collegiate level, so I know that you could probably provide some intel and in-text to what some context to what I'm about to say. Jalen, of course, my guy Jalen Williams. Of course, we got Caleb. Caleb, you guys are offensive linemen, so even though I know you guys understand what I'm about to talk about here in terms of pass rush. One thing that I saw on the tape, I saw this live. I didn't even need the 22, and I haven't even had a chance to watch the 22 yet, but I just saw this live, and it was very obvious the Eagles were doing this. They layered their pass rush. That is very much a Pete Carroll thing, and I think that's Hurt. I think it's a Clint Hurt thing. I think that's one of the adaptations they're making to Fangio's system, and they're bringing that Carroll-esque type concept of pass rushing to this. Now, when you layer, in simple terms, essentially you got one guy who's going shallow, one guy who's going deep, and that keeps the quarterback in the pocket, if that makes sense, right? You're layering your pass rush to make it hard for him to escape and step up and move around, do all those type of things. Not a coincidence they're playing Jordan Love when they do that, in my opinion. That was something that I'm not going to say they never did. Every team does these concepts, but I don't think that was a staple of our defense in previous years. There was a lot of kind of like just get to the quarterback. When you're pass rushing, freelance it and get there. I thought there was a little bit more intent to the way that they were pass rushing. Field conditions played a role, I think, Jose, a little bit here in terms of actual output from the production. If you're looking at grading and stuff like that, and you're going, oh, Steve, they were not graded as highly as I was hoping. I think the field conditions definitely played a little bit of a part in that, to be quite honest. I think there was an inherent advantage given to the offensive line over the defensive lines. But I also think you can say like accountability. Josh Sweat got a pressure home. Jalen Carter got a pressure home. Zach Bond had some sacks. The old man with the old man strength out there, and Brandon Graham played pretty well. I mean, we can give these guys a pass, but we also got to be a little skeptical at the same time with some of the guys who did not produce that we're expecting to. I do think that there's going to be a spotlight turned up and look towards Nolan Smith, and also turn and looked at a guy that we just paid, like, was it $17, $18 million a year to? So, I mean, I think the spotlight's going to be on them. Now, I'm going to give them a pass personally. Personally, I'm going to give them a pass because I do think the field conditions, I do think schematically we're doing things a little different. One of the layered passes I saw for just conceptually, Nolan Smith had the high area, and then they rolled them down. You could see the short. I can't remember if it was Sweater, who else was out. I can't remember who was the low guy in terms of the layer, but you could clearly see that they were layering the pass rush. And that sometimes can get you graded differently because it can look like the offensive lineman is just riding you by. But technically what you're doing is you're playing within the structure of your defense. You're not freelancing it. So complicated, Jose. I know you're probably like, damn, like, can you not complicate it? We don't need it more complicated. It's complicated. That's what I was saying. If my guy Sandman's in here, if Jalen's in here, Caleb's in here, they probably can give a little bit more context to like kind of how layering a pass rush works. They can give you different perspectives on it. Caleb and Jalen, former collegiate offensive linemen. My guy, Mr. Sandman, he's a former collegiate defensive lineman, played nose tackle. They can give you probably a little different perspectives on that. Guy Munn said Becton looked very good at guard. Yeah, I thought Becton looked very good. Good morning, Coach. What's up, Vincent? I personally feel Nick Sirianni is at fault for time and slow start of the offense. It's always good to live game experience to gain chemistry. I don't disagree with you there, Vincent. And I like Nick Sirianni. I actually think Nick Sirianni is a little underrated by our fan base as a coach. But slow starts when you're not in charge of the scheme, when you're not in charge of the play calling, when you're not in charge of in-game adjustments, when you're not in charge of situational play calling, you're in charge of preparation. And you failed to manage the team in a way that had them adequately prepared for the first couple possessions of the football game. I do think that he deserves a little blame there. I'm with you. I'm a Nick guy, and hey, I saw what I saw. Nick needs to be better. He needs to get these guys better prepared because that is his role. We need a true power back to help with Barkley with the power runs. Detroit has a nasty 1-2 punch at running back. Yeah, I wish we could find a guy like that. I mean, if you can find a young Jordan Howard out there, sure, it'd be a great addition to the team. I should rewatch the game. Becton was awesome. I have always thought that to watch him. Appreciate that, guys. BG looked awesome too. I thought he looked washed last year. Old man Grant probably had the best game of all the D linemen. Yeah, it's funny. I'm calling him an old man. And truth be told, I'm older than Brandon. I know Brandon probably, not that Brandon's not watching this, but Brandon gets like a clip of this shown to him and is like, I'm younger than that guy. He's calling me an old man. What's that make him? Grandpa? He's an old man in terms of football terms. He's a young man in terms of life experience. Pastor Drew said, I think Hunt's about to go crazy in this defense, Gates. Remember, I said it first. I'll give you your credit, sir. I can't believe you're a pro athlete and conditioning is an issue. Just makes no sense to me. You got to keep in mind, not conditioning, Jason, game shape. Those are different, man. Like, it's like saying, like, being in a general healthy state and then trying to run oh, I run a marathon. That's cool. Have you ever run an ultra marathon? Like that, the conditioning you do in the off season, the conditioning you do in the preseason, that's like top leer athlete type conditioning, think marathon. What you do in a game is like an ultra marathon. Like it's a whole different level of things, if that makes sense, Jason. Like it's a tick upward. That's why I was saying, like, if Avonte Maddox is being held back by injuries, and I don't know, he looks like he lost a step to me, but it could be injury related. I'm going to give him a chance. It won't get better by playing him more and more snaps. Like, you don't generally get healthier unless you got obviously if you like tore an SC joint or something like that, yeah, of course time could heal that if you're not being hit on that area. But generally speaking, the wear and tear on your body from the daily in and outs of just regular hits, right? We're not talking about spectacular hits or crazy rehabbing injury type stuff, but just like as the season goes on, that regular wear and tear stuff doesn't get better. You get what I mean? Like when I look at a guy like Avonte Maddox, I'm like, well, if you revert him back to a role to where he's only playing like maybe 8 to 12 snaps a game, then he probably, if he is being hindered by injury, if that's why he's lost the majority of that step, then that could get better as the season goes on. But like last night, or not last night, but on Friday night, that it looked bad. It looked bad, Jason. I was shocked at like I knew that he would struggle a little bit because he hasn't really been playing down nickel so much during the offseason, but I didn't think it'd be as bad as it looked. I was like, wow, like this is not, before we used to get mad when he would leave the game because there would be a difference in our defense. When Avonte would come out of the game, our defense wasn't the same. Our secondary did not play the same without Avonte in the game in 22. Now it's kind of like, oh my gosh, is Devontae actually holding us back as a nickel? Vincent said, Zach Bond, I was surprised how he played. Top Billing had film from him from Wisconsin, played off-ball linebacker. Avonte Maddox is cooked. He should never see the field. Kirk Cousins played lousy versus Steelers. Yeah, he did. It's a week-to-week league, but the Eagles' defense should be able to dominate their O-line. I hope so. I don't think Maddox is cooked. He's been playing safety all summer. Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, that is part of it. People forget how much preseason reps are needed. Yeah, our front office, apparently, and our coaching staff. Definitely. I forgot. If it comes down to DeJean or Maddox, I would rely on Maddox until DeJean sees more film study. Maddox did come up huge in the end zone covering Watson, where Love threw the ball out of bounds. Eagles should eat next week. Did we talk about Smitty's tackle after the pick? My dog turned into a cornerback for a play. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I mean, look, they fought for one another, China, and I think that's important. And during the week, I think we probably should talk about that a little bit more, China, because I think I failed to address that in today's video enough. But they fought for one another, and I think that's important because I feel like that aspect of the team got lost last year. They seem to be fighting for each other right now, and that's good. You got a shot. You got a shot as long as you're together. The NFL owners and Roger Goodell want more scoring, so why is the illegal formation a point of emphasis by the officials? Richie, you make a valid point, and I don't know. It's hard to watch the product on the field when they keep calling that. Kellen Moore must drooling at the mouth to watch tape and fix some mistakes to make this team better. Yep. Great point about Patrick Johnson. Yeah, surprised they didn't play him, man. Spa City said, do you think they should have played some in the preseason? Absolutely, sir. At least the series. That series isn't going to make you accustomed to like being hit or tackled or anything, Spa City. But like when you're working on clean operations with the football, I think it could have helped them. I still want to see Goddard more involved in this offense. Agree, show enough. He got to get used to checking. He was checking a few bad checks. Yeah, I mean, handling the protection and stuff is going to be a slow process. It's not an easy job to do. But at least when you mess up, you're really only getting your own self killed out there. That's crazy what you said about Peyton Manning, considering he was great in play action from under center. Yeah. Every quarterback's different in terms of their preferences. But yeah. I do like Jalen under center, though. United States Air Force, 24 years. Ooh. Thanks for your service, Antonio. That's a long time. I didn't spend 24 years in the service, sir. Bless you, bro. That's it's tough, sir. It's tough. It's tough, man. The only thing I can liken it to is that like the military is kind of like college athletics, to where, every 3 or 4 years you're getting all these new faces rolling in. Coach, what is your impression of the new kickoff rules? In most cases, I believe kicking it out of bounds is the safest play. I don't see a reason not to kick out of the end zone. Thoughts? Yeah, probably so. The squib kicks seem pretty effective, to be honest. But there's probably a diminishing return on how often you should do that. I don't love that play personally, Joe. I think they should go back, just move the kickoff deeper. Just move your kicker back further and move your line 5 yards back more. I don't know that necessarily is going to prevent as much injuries as they think. And I don't think it's produced as many explosive plays as they think. Thank you for your service, Antonio. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Antonio. Caleb says, completely agree with you on the pass rush aspect, depending on the quarterback. Definitely depends on the discipline. Exactly. A pass rusher must have rather than freelance and two-way goes. Yeah, exactly, Caleb. Thank you. So Caleb's talking about, like, we're talking about layering your pass rush. Like, there's a discipline aspect to that, and it gets kind of mucky when you're judging the pass rush grades on that, because there's a responsibility to that. You're not just freelancing. Ojomo looked good as well. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Dean's instincts are so overlooked. Yep. Thought he was really good around that red zone, man, when it came into sticking them inside the red zone. Jahan Dotson had 32 snaps. Would you do a video study to see if he ran effective routes? Yeah, that's no problem, Richie. Man, if Dean got that pick six, everyone would be on the Dean train. Oh, yeah. People are crying about the field. Y'all forget the field at the Super Bowl was far worse. That was Water Country USA, Vincent. I really thought the edge rushers did well. One of the things you preached last week was maintaining your rushing lanes. Yeah. Why did Ringo only get 6% of the snaps versus the Packers? It's a great question, Richie. I thought that would be a smart play if you were going to, if you're going to put Quignon in at the nickel. I thought, when you go into your nickel and dime packages, then kicking Ringo outside would have made some sense. But I think they like Quignon on the outside. We'll see if that remains. I think Quignon right now he's playing as the boundary corner, Richie. I think next year when Slay is probably gone, and Slay had a good game too. He was only targeted once because they just didn't want to throw his way. But I think when Slay's gone and you see him play that field corner role and he gets to show you some of that fluidity in his hips, ooh, that young man's a good player. Quignon's a really good player. Yeah, Fishing Eagle. I saw players on other teams slipping and fall on grass and synthetic surface all Sunday. Yes, they played as a team all game. Yeah, I think it's important, guys. The fact that they fought together. My guy Joe says after week 3 or 4, the starters not playing in the preseason will all be forgotten. 17, long rounds of battling. The NFL season is a marathon and not a sprint. Yeah, exactly. Just kick the ball out of bounds every time. The Eagles could have scored 50 tonight, barring the mental errors. Out of the end zone, I should say. I got what you meant, Daz. Change your cleats like Barkley did. Yeah, change your cleats. Yeah, they need to work on that more. The team seems to be concerned with winning, and the coach GMs are more worried about stats and who didn't play perfect. Yeah, you're right. AJ slipped on that second pick, which is why I give Jalen the benefit of the doubt on that one. He's got to play better, man. Jalen's a big reason why we won the game. Facts, not fiction. He's a big reason why we won the game. He didn't have his best game. He played pretty badly at certain spots, but he's also part of a big reason why we won the game. Like his play in the fourth quarter was clutch. Saquon's play in the whole game was clutch. The offensive line, we got to work on that exchange. That quarterback exchange has got to get better, but the sequencing has to be better. But I mean, it's getting there, guys. It's getting there. All right, y'all. We've been going for over an hour and a half. I'm about to sign off, but I appreciate y'all tuning in. And then ball should have went to Dotson on that play. Yeah, down in the down. If they would have went down by the red, down around the goal line, they had a couple of guys there where the ball could have been thrown. It's hard to do that then when you're on the run like that. But yeah, they need to practice that more. I think they need to get a little bit more practice in terms of the off schedule stuff. Like they're spending so much time on schedule, right? Making sure they had those outlets and stuff. Yeah, they need to spend a little bit more time with the off schedule stuff because there were some errors made off schedule. Shout out to the coach, Steve. Thank you, brother, for everything. Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Have a great day, Gate. I appreciate you guys, man. Sack Bond. All right, guys. I will see y'all tomorrow. We're going to talk defense tomorrow. All right. We did our talk about the offense today. We're going to come up with some defensive topics tomorrow. We're going to spend a lot more time. Yeah, man. I appreciate it, Richie. They got their tails kicked, sir. All right, man. Appreciate y'all. The gates are closing.